filled with problems and worries. I don't know if it's maybe the same for many of you, not getting enough sleep and relationship problems and bed bugs and all kinds of difficulties. And I'm fascinated by people who voluntarily add big problems to their sorry. Hello. No, it's not the best moment. I'm just in the middle of a talk. It's about civic courage, about people who take risks to protect others outside their own family and circle of friends, or to defend a common ideal such as democracy. Yes, I did have a good breakfast. A banana. I love you too. Sorry about that. That was my uncle in Brooklyn. Growing up, my sister and I, we didn't know that our uncle drank until one day he came home sober. What I'm interested in is these individuals who make their lives much harder voluntarily. And I want to give you 3 examples, people who I really don't understand in some way. It was the beginning of 2009 in the Swat Valley in Pakistan, and the Taliban had control. They were bombing schools for girls. They bombed more than 100 schools. They splashed acid in the faces of girls trying to go to school. And in London, the BBC editors thought that it would be interesting to have a blog from a schoolgirl in the midst of this hell in the Swat Valley. It would be sort of like Anne Frank's diary. And their representatives asked around to see if there was a girl who would be willing to write such a blog. And no one volunteered. Even if it would be anonymous, it could be found out. It would be dangerous. And then an 11-year-old Malala Yousafzai said, yes, I'll do it. And she began writing this blog for the BBC. And she wrote of the concerns of an 11-year-old, such as how the Taliban had blocked the cable networks so that she could no longer watch her favorite drama, My Dream Boy Will Come to Marry Me. And she wrote also of heavier subjects, such as one entry, I quote, "As I was going home from school, I heard a man saying, 'I will kill you.' I hastened my pace. To my utter relief, he was talking on his mobile and must have been threatening to kill someone else." End quote. And gradually the situation in the Swat Valley became more secure. Malala felt that she could speak out a little more, and she wrote at that time, I quote, "My life is like a movie full of dreams. I used to dream of becoming famous, to see my valley freed from the clutches of the Taliban, to see girls flying like butterflies, free from any restrictions. It is becoming as a reality, so I am happy, happy, and very happy," she wrote. And in that atmosphere of greater security, she began to speak out for girls' education, using her real name, and she admitted that it was she who had written the blog for BBC. And at one point she was interviewed on web TV, and afterwards she sent an email to the journalist written in all capital letters. "I want an access to the world of knowledge," she wrote, and she signed the email, "Your small video star." It was on October 9th last fall that Malala was on the school bus coming home from school, singing traditional songs with the other students. Two armed men stopped the school bus. One of them got on, yelled, "Which one of you is Malala? Speak up or I'll shoot you all." He found her. He shot Malala in the head and neck. She was treated in a local clinic and hospital, and then after a week, Malala was flown in a coma to a hospital in Birmingham, England, that specializes in bullet wounds. And after many surgery operations, she survived and even was able to start school again in Birmingham. When Malala was shot, there was a wave of support and love for her all around the world. She was on the cover of Newsweek magazine, Malala, the bravest girl in the world. She was twice on the cover of Time. Every political party of Canada nominated her for the Nobel Peace Prize, as did almost 1 million people on the web. And these strong reactions that are awakened when somebody is ready to take risks for the common good, for principles like girls' right to education, is something that fascinates me. Why this enormous global outpouring? Someone who reflected on that was the psychologist William James. Back in 1902, he wrote of people who risk their lives for strangers or for a common ideal. And he wrote that when we meet such a person, we feel that she is our born superior. So great is our esteem for her. And he went further to say that such individuals seem to have in some way touched life's deepest mystery. And I think of another person who was also in some way touched that mystery, Sophie Scholl. How many of you have come across her story? Fewer than half. Sophie Scholl, who was born in Ulm, Germany, the same town where Albert Einstein was born, and she started as a student at the University of Munich in 1942. Her brother was already there, so she inherited his social circle. They had wonderful discussions with friends late into the night. They went to the theater, they went hiking on weekends. A wonderful university life. But then Sophie and her brother Hans began to hear more about what their country, Adolf Hitler's Germany, was doing. The mass execution of Jews, the torture of prisoners, medical experiments without anesthesia on prisoners, other kinds of atrocities. And Sophie and her brother felt they had to do something to protest against this. They began writing pamphlets that they copied in secret on a hand-cranked mimeograph machine, and they distributed them in great secrecy around Munich, sometimes together with some friends. Sometimes two of them would pretend to be lovers at midnight, going around the town and quietly leave a stack of pamphlets in a public place where people would find them. Because they knew if they were ever caught giving out these pamphlets, it would be the end. They were giving out copies of their 6th pamphlet at the university. They thought no one was there to see them. They were putting copies in the hallways where the students would find them. And then a custodian saw them. He ran after them. He grabbed them. he took them to the Gestapo, the Nazi police, and Sophie and her brother Hans were beheaded. And a few years ago, a German magazine did a study of the attitudes of young Germans, 40 years old or younger, and asked them who was the greatest German of all times. And the answer was Sophie and Hans Scholl, ahead of Bach, Beethoven, and Einstein. Not everyone who dies at age 21 manages to achieve more than Bach, Beethoven, and Einstein. And it strikes me the power of these individuals to move the hearts of everyone else. And when I read of Sophie and Hans, I feel, yes, Sophie, yes, Hans, I believe in your secret conspiracy of hope. You are the people who, in the midst of a world of violence and indifference, remind us that it is possible for human beings to shine so magnificently. And I used to teach a course at Harvard about civic courage and engagement, and in the course, because of the subject matter, attracted many students. One term there were more than 600 students. Friends say that my ego has never recovered from that time, and they're right. Boston Magazine wrote about the course. They said that the course leads its students toward St. Francis-style sainthood. And the magazine continued, the course is taught by the slim, wispy-voiced, and vaguely monkish Brian Palmer. And I thought to myself, how did they find out so much about me? I also took up stories of civic courage by bringing in guests who had taken great risks. And students often, after interviewing these guests, wanted to in some way join with them, to join them in their work. And I had the feeling then that courage can be almost as contagious as fear. But some forms of courage perhaps should carry a warning label. Don't try this at home. I think of Vito Pilecki, who was a Polish man raising a family on his farm in the 1930s. Then when the Germans invaded Poland in 1939, the start of World War II, Vito joined the resistance. There were rumors about a prison camp that the Germans had set up in a Polish town called Auschwitz. And it was known that this was a place of exceptional brutality, but the details were lacking. And Vito realized that it was important for the resistance, important for everyone fighting against Adolf Hitler's regime to know what was happening in Auschwitz. So he volunteered to be taken prisoner there. He waited for a day when the Germans were rounding up Jews and others in a square, and he too was taken to Auschwitz. He spent 947 days there, smuggling out messages about what was happening whenever he could, until he decided he couldn't take it any longer, and he planned an escape. He was able to escape, and saw his family again. Then after the war, after the Soviets had taken over the government of Poland, he joined the resistance against Soviet domination. He wanted Poland to be a free country. He was picked up by 2 secret agents, tortured, and executed. I think of Vito, and I'm reminded of some words of the Canadian Buddhist nun, Pema Chodron, who said, "Go to the places that scare you." And civic courage is so much about doing that. Here in New York, I think even of the firefighters going up the burning World Trade Center tower, trying to rescue those who were trapped. Go to the places that scare you. But I find it hard to understand a person like Vito to voluntarily go into Auschwitz. That for me seems an incredible decision. In the courses, we try also to look at more day-to-day situations. There was someone on the number 6 train here in New York who saw a fight between 2 people, and this man was eating nachos from a tray, and as he walked between the attacker and the victim, he continued to eat his nachos to give an atmosphere of nonchalance. He went down in YouTube history forever as Snack Man. And they say with great nachos comes great responsibility. Or I think of Wesley Outry, who was going into the subway with his 2 young daughters. He's a construction worker here in New York. He saw a man tumble onto the track in front of an oncoming train. Wesley thought to himself, "Fool, you gotta go down there." He jumped down onto the track. He pushed the other man in the space between the metal rails, and 4 wagons of the train rolled over these 2 men before it came to a stop. But then they could yell up from under the train that they were not harmed. Wesley said that it was a very strange conversation there under the train, because the man who had fallen didn't quite understand why he was there under a subway train being hugged by a stranger. But Wesley was somebody who understood that life is a gift. It's not something we hold on to in all eternity. And he was ready to pass that gift on if he was the most suitable person to help in somebody else's emergency. This is the mystery that William James was talking of, and in the 2 hours that I have remaining in this talk, I'll say a little bit more about that mystery that heroes touch. No, I guess since in some way it remains a mystery also for me, I'll just leave you with a thought from Cesar Chavez. To be human is to suffer for others. God help us to be human.